clock on the airport wall ticked over to 11:45 p.m. as Sarah stepped off her flight. Girard International Airport was almost deserted, a ghostly hush hanging over the vast, empty terminal. She sighed, realizing her next flight wasn't until 7 a.m. The thought of spending the night here sent a shiver down her spine, but she had no choice. Dragging her suitcase behind her, Sarah wandered through the dimly lit terminal. The shops were closed, their metal grates pulled down tight. Even the fast food joints were dark, their neon signs flickering sporadically. She found a row of uncomfortable seats near a large window overlooking the dark tarmac and settled in, hoping to catch some sleep. As she tried to get comfortable, a soft tapping sound caught her attention. She looked around but saw nothing. The terminal was eerily quiet, with only the occasional announcement echoing through the PA system. She closed her eyes, willing herself to relax. Sarah's eyes snapped open. The tapping was louder now, rhythmic and insistent. She turned her head and saw a shadowy figure standing by the information desk, its back turned to her. The figure was unnervingly still, staring at something unseen. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice breaking the silence. The figure didn't move. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She quickly stood up, deciding to find somewhere else to wait out the night. As she walked away, she glanced back. The figure was gone. Her footsteps echoed through the empty terminal as she made her way to a small cafe she remembered passing earlier. To her relief, it was open. A lone barista stood behind the counter, her face illuminated by the soft glow of her phone. "Can I get a coffee, please?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. The barista looked up, startled. "Sure thing," she said, her eyes darting around nervously. "You're the only customer I've seen in hours." Sarah offered a weak smile. "Midnight layover," she explained. The barista nodded knowingly. "Yeah, those can be rough." As Sarah waited for her coffee, she glanced around the cafe. It was small and cozy, but something about it felt off. Maybe it was the flickering lights or the way shadows seemed to dance in the corners. She shook her head, trying to dispel the feeling of unease. The barista handed her the coffee, and Sarah took a seat by the window. She sipped the hot drink, hoping it would calm her nerves. The terminal outside was dark and empty, the only movement the occasional janitor pushing a mop across the floor. The sound was closer now, coming from somewhere inside the cafe. Sarah's heart raced as she looked around. The barista was gone, and the door to the kitchen was slightly ajar. The tapping continued, growing louder and more frantic. Gathering her courage, Sarah stood up and approached the kitchen door. She pushed it open and peered inside. The room was empty, save for the steady drip of a leaking faucet. She turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind her, plunging the room into darkness. Panic set in as she fumbled for the light switch. Her fingers brushed against something cold and clammy. She recoiled, her breath coming in short gasps. The tapping was now a deafening pounding, echoing off the walls. The lights flickered on, and Sarah found herself face to face with the shadowy figure. Its features were indistinct, its form shifting and wavering like smoke. She backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you want?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The figure raised a hand, pointing towards the far end of the kitchen. Sarah followed its gesture and saw a door she hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, a pale light spilling out from the crack. With no other options, she slowly approached the door, and pushed it open. The room beyond was small and bare, except for a single old-fashioned suitcase sitting in the middle of the floor. The suitcase was covered in dust, and as Sarah stepped closer, she could see it was locked with a rusty padlock. The tapping had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. She turned back to the figure, but it was gone. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the suitcase. Her fingers brushed against the lock, and it fell away with a soft click. The lid creaked open, revealing a neatly folded set of clothes and a small leather-bound journal. Sarah picked up the journal and opened it. The pages were filled with neat, meticulous handwriting, detailing the life of a woman named Emily, who had disappeared from the airport years ago. The last entry was dated the night she vanished. "I've been hearing the tapping again. I know it's coming for me. I don't think I can escape this time." Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized she was reading the final words of a woman who had faced the same terror she was now experiencing. She looked up from the journal, and the shadowy figure was back, standing in the doorway. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The figure remained silent, but Sarah felt a strange sense of understanding. The suitcase, the journal, it was a warning, a plea for help from those who had vanished before her. She had to get out before it was too late. Clutching the journal, she ran back through the kitchen and into the terminal. The lights were flickering wildly now, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She sprinted towards the main entrance, praying it wouldn't be locked. To her relief, the doors slid open, and she stumbled out into the night. The cool air hit her face, bringing with it a sense of freedom and safety. She turned back to the terminal, half expecting to see the shadowy figure watching her. But the entrance was empty, the terminal silent once more. Sarah didn't stop running until she reached a nearby hotel. She checked in, locking the door behind her and collapsing onto the bed. The journal lay beside her, a chilling reminder of the night's events. As she drifted off to sleep, she vowed to tell Emily's story, to warn others of the danger lurking in Girard International Airport. The midnight layover had claimed many victims, but she wouldn't be one of them. She would ensure their voices were heard, their stories remembered. But even as sleep took her, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't truly escaped. Somewhere in the back of her mind, the tapping continued, a relentless reminder of the terror she had faced and the unknown horror that might still be waiting for her. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll be back with more fascinating stories from the world of crime. Until then, stay curious and stay safe.
In the heart of a bustling airport, with the echoes of boarding calls and the whirl of luggage wheels, the diverse group of passengers found themselves unexpectedly united. They came from different walks of life, each with their own destination and purpose. Yet fate had conspired to bring them together in the face of an unforeseen challenge. The departure lounge buzzed with anticipation as travelers awaited the call to board their respective flights. Among them was Lucille, a young businesswoman with a determined stride and a mind fixated on her upcoming presentation in New York. Beside her sat Mr. Thompson, an elderly gentleman with a warm smile and a well-worn novel tucked under his arm. He was on his way to visit his grandchildren in Florida, eager for their hugs and laughter. As the clock ticked closer to departure time, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. His sudden announcement crackled over the intercom, breaking the anticipatory silence. Attention all passengers. Due to severe weather conditions, all outgoing flights have been temporarily suspended. We apologize for the inconvenience and ask that you remain patient as we assess the situation. Lucille's heart sank as she glanced out the window to see dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The once promising sky now threatened with an impending storm, its fury evident in the howling wind and the ominous rumble of thunder. With a heavy sigh, she turned to Mr. Thompson, who wore a look of resigned acceptance. "Looks like we're in for a long wait," she remarked. Trying to muster a smile, Mr. Thompson nodded, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Ah, well, what's a little dither in the grand scheme of things? Perhaps this is an opportunity for unexpected adventures." Little did they know how prophetic his words would prove to be. As the storm intensified outside, the airport descended into chaos. Passengers shuffled aimlessly, seeking refuge from the tempest that raged beyond the confines of the terminal. Lucille and Mr. Thompson found themselves drawn to a small cafe tucked away in a corner, seeking solace in steaming cups of coffee and whispered conversations. They were soon joined by others seeking refuge from the storm. Among them was Maria, a weary traveler with a toddler in tow, her face etched with exhaustion and worry. Beside her sat Raj, a jovial backpacker with a penchant for storytelling and a backpack filled with souvenirs from distant lands. Despite their differences, the group found common ground in their shared predicament. They swapped stories of missed connections and canceled plans, finding solace in each other's company amidst the uncertainty that enveloped them. As the hours stretched into eternity, the bonds between the stranded passengers deepened. They laughed in the face of adversity, finding humor in the absurdity of their situation. They shared meals scavenged from vending machines and played makeshift games to pass the time. During chaos, they forged friendships that would endure long after the storm had passed. As night fell and the storm raged on, the airport descended into darkness. Power flickered, casting eerie shadows across the deserted corridors. The once familiar surroundings took on a surreal quality, as if they had stumbled into a world untouched by time. With no end to the storm in sight, the group faced their most daunting challenge yet: the prospect of spending the night in the airport. Cots were hastily set up in the departure lounge, offering little comfort to weary travelers seeking respite from the relentless storm. Lucille tossed and turned on her cot, her mind consumed by worries of the presentation she was scheduled to give the following day. Beside her, Mr. Thompson offered words of comfort, his gentle voice a soothing balm to her troubled thoughts. In the darkness, Maria clutched her sleeping child close, her heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Raj, ever the optimist, regaled them with tales of his travels, his voice a beacon of hope in the darkness that threatened to engulf them. As the night wore on, the storm raged outside, its fury unabated by the passage of time. Yet amidst the chaos and uncertainty, the group found strength in each other, drawing courage from the bonds they had forged in the crucible of adversity. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight pierced the storm clouds, a sense of hope washed over the weary travelers. The worst of the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by its fury. Emerging from the confines of the airport, the group was greeted by a scene of breathtaking beauty. The once desolate landscape was now bathed in the soft glow of morning light, the air alive with the promise of a new day. Lucille breathed a sigh of relief as she watched the storm clouds recede into the distance. Despite the challenges they had faced, she knew that the experience had changed them in ways they could never have imagined. Beside her, Mr. Thompson smiled, his eyes twinkling with newfound wisdom. "Sometimes it takes a storm to remind us of what truly matters," he remarked, his voice tinged with nostalgia. As they prepared to part ways and resume their journeys, the group exchanged heartfelt farewells, knowing that they would always carry a piece of this shared experience with them wherever they went. For in the midst of chaos, they had found light in the darkness, and in each other, they had found hope. And as they went their separate ways, they knew that no storm could ever extinguish the bonds they had forged amidst the tempest of life. And so, as the sun rose high in the sky, casting its golden light upon the world below, the stranded passengers bid farewell to the airport that had been their refuge in the storm, knowing that they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than they had ever been before. The airport was bustling with activity as travelers hurried to catch their flights. Among them was Michael, a weary businessman returning home after a long trip. He navigated through the crowds with his suitcase in tow, eager to reach the comfort of his own bed. As he approached the departure gate, Michael noticed an unusual sense of tension in the air. The usual hum of chatter was replaced by whispers of unease. Ignoring the feeling, he checked the departure board and confirmed that his flight was still on schedule. Relieved, he settled into a nearby seat to wait. Minutes turned into hours, and Michael's flight was delayed indefinitely. An announcement over the intercom explained that a powerful storm was approaching, and all flights were grounded until further notice. Frustration rippled through the crowd as passengers scrambled to make alternate arrangements. Michael sighed and resigned himself to the delay. He decided to make the most of his time by exploring the airport. As he wandered the corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air seemed charged with an eerie energy, and shadows danced in the corners of his vision. Lost in thought, Michael wandered into a deserted corner of the airport. There, he encountered a mysterious figure cloaked in shadow. The stranger's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you lost, traveler?" the stranger asked, their voice low and hypnotic. Michael hesitated, unsure whether to trust this enigmatic figure. But something compelled him to stay. "I'm just waiting for my flight," Michael replied cautiously. The stranger nodded, a knowing smile playing at the corners of their lips. "Ah, but flights may not be departing anytime soon," the stranger said cryptically. "Storm approaches, and it brings more than just rain and wind." Intrigued despite himself, Michael pressed the stranger for more information. The stranger's eyes glittered with amusement as they revealed that they were a practitioner of ancient sorcery, attuned to the forces of nature. "The storm that approaches is no ordinary tempest," the stranger explained. "It is a manifestation of dark magic, conjured by those who seek to harness its power for their own ends." Michael's skepticism wavered as he listened to the stranger's words. Could it be possible that magic was real, and that he had stumbled upon a practitioner of the arcane arts? Before Michael could ponder further, the storm descended upon the airport with a fury unlike anything he had ever seen. Lightning crackled across the sky, and thunder rumbled like the growl of a vengeful beast. Winds howled through the corridors, rattling windows and sending debris flying. In the chaos that ensued, Michael found himself separated from the other passengers. Panic gripped his heart as he realized that he was alone, trapped in the airport with no means of escape. Desperate for shelter, Michael sought refuge in a secluded corner of the terminal. But even there, he could not escape the relentless fury of the storm. As Michael huddled in fear, the stranger appeared before him once more. Their cloak billowed around them like the wings of a raven, and their eyes gleamed with an unholy light. "Do not be afraid, traveler," the stranger said, their voice a soothing melody amidst the chaos. "For I can offer you protection from the storm, but it will come at a price." Michael's mind reeled as he weighed the stranger's offer. Could he trust this mysterious figure, or was he consigning himself to an even darker fate? In the end, desperation outweighed caution, and Michael accepted the stranger's offer. With a flick of their wrist, the stranger wove a web of shadows around him, shielding him from the storm's wrath. For days and nights, Michael remained trapped in the airport, a prisoner of the storm and its dark magic. Time seemed to lose all meaning as he wandered the deserted corridors, his only companion the enigmatic stranger who had offered him protection. As the days stretched into weeks, Michael found himself drawn deeper into the stranger's world. They shared secrets and sorrows, their words weaving a tapestry of darkness and light. But beneath the surface, Michael sensed a darkness lurking, a shadow that whispered of ancient evils and forbidden knowledge. And try as he might, he could not shake the feeling that he had made a pact with a force far beyond his comprehension. As the storm finally began to wane, Michael faced a choice: to remain in the stranger's thrall or to break free and forge his own path. But with every passing moment, the darkness closed in around him, threatening to consume him whole. In the end, it was not fear that drove Michael to action, but the flicker of hope that still burned within him. With a newfound resolve, he confronted the stranger and demanded answers. "Why have you trapped me here?" Michael demanded, his voice echoing through the empty corridors. The stranger regarded him with a mixture of amusement and scorn. "You sought power, traveler, and I offered it to you," they replied. "But power comes with a price, and you have yet to pay yours." With a surge of determination, Michael broke free from the stranger's hold. He cast aside the cloak of shadows that had bound him and faced the storm head-on, his heart filled with defiance. As he stepped out into the open air, Michael felt a sense of liberation wash over him. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in the distance, a reminder of the trials he had faced and the choices he had made. And though he knew that the stranger's words would haunt him forever, Michael walked away with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. Years passed, and Michael's encounter with the storm and its dark magic faded into memory. But the lessons he had learned and the bonds he had forged remained with him always, guiding him on his journey through life. And though he never forgot the stranger who had offered him power and the storm that had tested his resolve, Michael knew that true strength lay not in magic or darkness, but in the light that burned within his own heart. It was supposed to be a routine trip, just another flight from New York to Los Angeles. But as the passengers settled into their seats aboard Flight 617, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The sky outside was ominously dark, heavy clouds looming on the horizon. Among the passengers was Friya, a young woman traveling alone for the first time in years. She was nervous, but excited for the journey ahead. Little did she know this flight would be like no other. As the plane taxied down the runway, the first drops of rain began to fall. Friya glanced out the window, watching as the storm brewed in the distance. Lightning flashed, illuminating the sky in a ghostly glow. She gripped the armrest tightly, a sense of unease settling over her. But it wasn't just Friya who felt it. Throughout the plane, whispers of concern echoed among the passengers. The flight attendants tried to reassure them, but their words fell flat in the face of the approaching tempest. As Flight 617 soared into the sky, the storm descended upon them with ferocious intensity. Turbulence rocked the plane, sending passengers lurching in their seats. Friya closed her eyes, praying for the turbulence to pass. But it only grew worse. The plane shook violently, the roar of the wind drowning out all other sounds. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the cabin in blinding flashes. Panic spread among the passengers like wildfire, screams mingling with the howl of the storm. Then, with a deafening crack, the plane was struck by lightning. Smoke filled the cabin as alarms blared overhead. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, casting an eerie glow in the chaos. Friya clung to her seat, heart pounding in her chest. Beside her, middle-aged man gripped his rosary tightly, muttering prayers under his breath. The flight attendants struggled to maintain order, but it was clear that they were just as terrified as the passengers. Miraculously, the pilot managed to regain control of the plane, but their troubles were far from over. With the storm raging outside, it was impossible to navigate safely to their destination. Reluctantly, the pilot announced that they would have to make an emergency landing. As the plane descended through the storm clouds, Friya braced herself for impact. The runway loomed below, slick with rain and buffeted by gusts of wind. With a jolt that sent shivers down her spine, the plane touched down, skidding to a stop on the rain-soaked tarmac. But their relief was short-lived. As the passengers disembarked onto the deserted runway, they were greeted by a scene of utter desolation. The airport terminal loomed in the distance, its windows shattered and its lights flickering ominously. With no other options, the passengers trudged towards the terminal, seeking shelter from the storm. But as they crossed the threshold, they realized that they were not alone. Inside the terminal, the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unnatural and unsettling. Friya shivered, her skin prickling with unease. As they ventured deeper into the terminal, they encountered signs of chaos and abandonment. Luggage lay strewn across the floor, shops and restaurants abandoned mid-service. It was as if the entire airport had been frozen in time, trapped in some eerie limbo between the past and the present. But it was what lurked in the shadows that truly terrified them. Strange noises echoed through the corridors, whispers and footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere. Some claimed to have seen figures darting between the pillars, their forms indistinct and fleeting. As the hours passed, tensions mounted among the passengers. Fear and paranoia spread like contagion, each shadow and creak of the building fueling their terror. They were trapped, at the mercy of forces beyond their understanding. Days turned into weeks as the storm raged on outside. With each passing hour, the passengers grew more desperate, their sanity fraying at the edges. Some barricaded themselves in makeshift shelters, while others roamed the halls in search of an escape. Friya tried to stay strong, clinging to the hope that they would be rescued soon. But as the days stretched into months, that hope began to fade. Reality blurred into nightmare, the boundaries between waking and dreaming growing ever more tenuous. In the darkness of the terminal, strange phenomena became commonplace. Objects moved of their own accord, doors slammed shut without warning. Some claimed to have seen apparitions wandering the halls, their eyes empty and their forms translucent. And then there were the voices, whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, speaking in tongues long forgotten. They spoke of ancient curses and unspeakable horrors, their words sending chills down Friya's spine. As the storm raged on outside, Friya knew that they couldn't stay trapped in the terminal forever. With each passing day, their supplies dwindled and their spirits waned. They needed to find a way out, no matter the cost. Gathering what few allies remained, Friya set out to confront the darkness that lurked within the airport. Armed with makeshift weapons and steely determination, they ventured into the heart of the terminal, ready to face whatever lay in wait. What they found was beyond anything they could have imagined. In the depths of the airport, hidden from prying eyes, lay an ancient evil older than time itself. It hungered for their souls, feeding on their fear and despair. But Friya refused to let it win. With courage born of desperation, she confronted the entity head-on, wielding the power of hope against the darkness. And in the end, it was enough. As the storm outside finally began to subside, the passengers emerged from the terminal, battered but unbroken. Though they would carry the scars of their ordeal for the rest of their lives, they knew that they had triumphed over the forces of darkness. And as they boarded a rescue plane bound for home, Friya looked out the window one last time, vowing never to forget the horrors they had faced together. For in the end, It was not the storm that defined them, but their courage in the face of adversity. And as long as they stood together, they knew that they could weather any storm that came their way.